Good afternoon and welcome to the Oxford Analytica video briefing. I'm Yulia Rusanova and today we'll be talking about the latest developments in the Middle East. I'm joined by a frequent contributor and the region head, Dr. Robin Ostle. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
And to start off, shall we perhaps talk a bit about the spreading of the Syrian civil war into the neighboring states of Iraq and Lebanon?
Yes, indeed. I mean, this sadly is not a new phenomenon, but over the past 2 to 3 weeks, it's taken on significant and dramatic and violent proportions. To take the Lebanon first, for example, there have been a number of car bombs in particular targeting Shiite targets and Hezbollah in and around Beirut. And there have been also reprisals against Sunni targets and individuals within the Lebanon. The Lebanon, of course, increasingly has had to face the problem of many hundreds of refugees coming over the border. And this is a very difficult problem for such a small country, and those refugees increasingly are a potential source of individuals sort of becoming implicated, of course, in the fighting in Syria now taking place on Lebanese soil. As far as Iraq is concerned, over the past week we have seen the jihadist attacks, particularly in Anbar province, against the towns of Fallujah and Ramadi. Fallujah, I think, is still under the control of these jihadist rebels. And increasingly that area of Iraq and the eastern area of Syria, the jihadist groups on either side are making common cause. The border, that's to say the border of this region, which, if you can imagine a map, these are the areas of Syria and Iraq that lie to the south of the Kurdish areas in northeastern Syria and northwestern Syria and northwestern Iraq. That border scarcely exists as a border anymore, and jihadists cross from one side or the other, and they are increasingly, of course, involved in the fighting, both against the Syrian regime and now increasingly against other rebel factions and groups.
Thank you, Robin. And then what are the dangers of a growth of a series of failed states from Iraq to the Eastern Mediterranean, very much on the border of the EU?
Well, I think we have seen a number of examples in recent years of the consequences of nation states ceasing to function as nation states. In other words, either imposing or guaranteeing a certain degree of law and order for the citizens of that nation state. Once that type of system and its institutions begins to break down, then the members of these nation states increasingly retreat into regional loyalties. They can be ethnic loyalties or sectarian loyalties, and so we've seen Syria fragment, for example, over the past 2.5 years or so of this tragic civil war, into violent regional and sectarian conflict, which is increasingly now paralleled in Iraq, where you have the largely Shi'i south and the Sunni northwestern areas. Increasingly there is little or no national system of control, and the danger is here that these states start to break up. They become essentially fragmented, failed states where there is no, as it were, overall order and control anymore. These states then become havens, if you like, or fertile areas for the growth of terrorism in its various forms. Instability can spread from them to neighboring areas. And remember that we're talking here about the Eastern Mediterranean, which is, in a sense, on the very doorstep of the European Union. The Mediterranean is a European sea, as well as it were, the sea of those Arab states to its south and to its east.
Robin, how would you assess the possibilities of a painful diplomatic reconciliation involving local actors, Russia, United States, EU, in this matter?
Well, I think what everybody has to realize in this awful situation is that there are fundamentally two directions of travel, one of which is disastrous, and that's the direction which goes on increasing the fragmentation and the failure of these nation states, thereby making them sort of centers of instability which can affect not just the immediate countries around them, but countries somewhat further afield. Or the other direction of travel, however difficult it is at least one that offers some hope, and that is the eventual reconstruction, particularly of Syria, because Syria is key here. Now, Syria is not going to be reconstructed politically as it was before. No, that's not what's going to happen. But in broad general terms, one can envision a nation state with a central administration allowing a significant degree of devolution toward, or possibly federalism if you like, towards which takes into account regional sensitivities, ethnic or sectarian sensitivities. And that is only going to be achieved by sustained, concerted action on the part not only of the local actors, but on the part of the USA, Russia, and the European Union. And there's one other player that I would like to mention in this context, very important, that is Iran. Because Iran is a major geopolitical power, a country which has interests which it regards as legitimate interests, both in the Gulf, in Iraq, and of course it sees also that it has interests in Syria, even as far as Lebanon. I find it very difficult to envisage any political reconstruction, not just of Syria, but this area in general of the Eastern Mediterranean and the Levant, that doesn't include a form of Iranian participation. So, of course, it's quite right that our attention should be focused on the management of the Iranian nuclear issue. But alongside that, one might suggest almost just as important, is to bring Iran back into the international fold so that it can play its proper role as a major power in this region, which is what it is.
Thank you very much, Robin. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you'd like to find out more about our regional coverage in the Middle East, please do get in touch with us via our website. This is Yulia Rusanova for the Oxford Analytica video briefing. Thank you.